Do you have another question?
Yeah, we can get to a couple more. Maybe we can do some a little bit later, too. How far up the river would the surge go? We're talking so much about surge.
Surge, sure. It's going to push that water up the rivers. You're going to see river rises 2-3 feet above normal, even as far up as Somerville or up the Cooper River, even further back, especially up the lower Santee River, up the Wakanda River, all the way up as you go behind Georgetown, all the way on up into Myrtle Beach. That's up here. That's being pushed onshore. So
yeah, even those inland areas,
right,
we're wondering about the storm
those
surge
rivers. Yeah, and you put this kind of rain on top of it. Obviously, it continues to make a problem.
And we haven't talked much about tornadoes, although we're in a tornado watch until midnight.
We are, and the tornado threat I can kind of show you here a little bit different on here. So here's the core of the storm as we take a look at it. So the tornado threat is north and east of the center, typically, in particular north and east. So as the storm comes up from the south, there is an elevated opportunity for rotation in these bands. We've already seen a little bit in the parts of Georgia and on into Beaufort. So if a tornado warning is issued, we'll let you know. But as the core of the storm gets in, it's going to be very difficult to tell the difference anyway. When you're talking about 80, 90, 100 mile an hour winds. And these are usually sometimes secondary vortices rotating around the main cyclone. So, do
you want to get to some more now, or do you want to do some later?
It's up to that. We can do a couple more.
Okay, we can do a couple more. Okay, so
we're not going anywhere.
Yeah, a couple of people were wondering the differences between Matthew and Hugo in that, what do you expect when you get a direct hit versus riding along the coast, and then the storm surge now versus then?
That is a great question. Hugo came in from this direction, from the ocean,
so perpendicular,
perpendicular to the coast up here. Let me move this down to the actual where we are. There we are. So Hugo came up. Here's the center, but here's Charleston. Hugo came up this way, did a lot of damage right up in here, did a lot of damage all over, but in particular, they had 22 feet of McClellanville, and we had very, very high water there, and the center of that storm made landfall at midnight on September 21st, 1989, right over the harbor, and then went that way, and it was moving that way 25 miles an hour. I think the eye was 19 nautical miles. This one's coming from this way. Different direction, and the difference being that this one's going to be along the coast a lot longer than Hugo moved right through. I mean, it did a lot of damage. We started to feel the effects around 9, 10 o'clock that night, and then till about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. This one we're already feeling the effects now, and it's going to go until about 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. So the strong winds are going to be longer on the coast. Also, the trajectory of these winds is going to be critical to the type of storm surge in relation to the heading of the storm.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay, a couple more. Have two. Okay, so we still have Nicole out in the Atlantic. We haven't really talked much about that because it's not a threat for us. But somebody was wondering, have 2 or more hurricanes ever collided, and could this happen?
No, actually, they won't collide. One would be probably knock the other one down. The other one would
steal its energy.
Steal its energy. The outflow from one also would affect the other one. But Nicole is so far off to the east, that's going to stay out, it looks like, to sea. But that, believe it or not, was, as of yesterday, was a Category 2 hurricane. So, I mean, and that was another. I mean, it's been a busy hurricane season.
Seriously.
I mean, here in the Low Country, in the Atlantic Basin, as it were.
And we mentioned a couple times when we talk about, coastal areas will be more affected than the inland spots. Right. But where do we cross that line? Or where,
a great
and
question.
I know we don't have a definitive line when we say this, but I think we have a kind of a general rule that we want to share with everybody.
What I'm going to do is call up my little pen.
Go ahead and draw it.
Kind of draw. Let me zoom out here just a little bit. What I'm doing is you'll see it. If you guys want to take this fold, you might be able to see it a little bit better, guys. So, all right. So coastal, think about Highway 17. Anything to the east of Highway 17 is going to be coastal. Anything like that. Anything on the west side of Highway 17 is inland. Now, granted, North Charleston, even as close as Goose Creek, Ladson, Hanahan, you could probably certainly put borderline coastal. And same thing for Andrews is probably inland, but Georgetown is coastal. But anything on the other side of that line, if you're on that side of that line, you're inland. This is all the coastal areas right here along the coast. So as we look at that line right there, that's pretty much kind of the definitive. I mean, this is just, there's no boundary or anything, but typically that's what we see. Now with this storm coming up like this, along the coast like that. The wind field distribution goes out about 40 miles like that for the hurricane force winds. The core is going to be like that, right along the top. So as it comes north, the core of those winds is going to be right, if this is where the storm's going like this, well, the core of those winds is going to be just like that to the north of the center as it moves by, but then the hurricane force winds will extend out maybe 30 to 40 miles. That's why that one projection that we were talking about shows that storm moving a little further like this, coming on up, like that at like 2 or 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. There's the core of the storm right down there, and continuing right in here with the hurricane force winds. As you look, this area is hurricane force winds. As we head toward 9 o'clock in the morning, kind of overspreads the area, and then of course later in the day, still 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we're looking at still some tropical storm force winds here, some 55 plus here as the storm pulls away. You remember Hermine came by, and we had quite a bit of wind on the backside of that storm as it pulled out. So yeah, we're in it until through the morning. I think the worst of the storm though was at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning to about probably after sunrise to about say 5, 6, 7 in the morning, and then beyond that to about lunchtime.
Speaking of those hurricane force winds, we had a question: consistent or intermittent?
The wind themselves? Well, as you look at the core of the storm, right now they're going to be intermittent. They're going to be on again, off again. They're going to be winds that are going to be gusty. As you look at those tropical storm force gusts that we're receiving now, as let me pull the storm up here a little bit further north. So as you see the core of the storm coming up from the south, so those winds are going to be on again, off again in these bands up here.
Kind of like the rain.
Like the rain. Now, they're within the rain bands. That's where the winds is. Now, what happens is, as the core, this is going to be the core of the storm right back in here, as the core of the storm gets up here, then it's not going to stop. It's just going to be nonstop, constant, sideways rain with tropical storm to hurricane force winds. That's when the most damage will be done. Okay,
final question for right now. What at the moment is influencing this storm?
Well, it's its own entity right now. It is it's being driven. Let me have to zoom way on out here. Let's see if I have that other map I had the other night. I'm going to zoom down here just a little bit. Let's see. Yeah, I think this is it. Okay, so there's the storm. It's being driven right now by this big area of high pressure to the north and east. So there's right now an opening. This trough has created a weakness, and it's kind of working to the western edge of that high. Eventually, the high is going to break down a little bit, and that's going to help turn the storm a little bit further to the right, and eventually all the way to the right. And as it goes right, the ridge itself might build back in and force the storm more south. That's where that loop comes from. So right now, those are the drivers of the storm, and will continue to be the players.
Okay, we'll continue to be taking your questions on our Facebook page, Bill's Facebook page, Bill Walsh, Live 5 News. I'm Jordan Wilkerson, Live 5 News, and you can follow us on Twitter as well. And we'll be right back.